The rain had soaked through Sarah Bennett's thin delivery jacket, but she barely noticed the cold anymore. She was standing outside a closed restaurant in Chicago, Illinois, staring at the last meal she had been able to afford that night. It was supposed to be dinner for her and her 8-year-old son, Caleb. Instead, across the street, an elderly homeless man sat alone on a wet wooden bench, trembling beneath a torn coat. Sarah had only two choices: take the food home and let her son eat, or give it away and hope somehow tomorrow would be better. She looked at the small cardboard container in her hands, then at the old man. Her stomach was empty, her wallet held less than $5, and she had already worked 11 hours delivering food. But something inside her refused to let her walk away. She crossed the rain-soaked street, sat beside the stranger, and quietly placed the meal into his hands. The old man stared at her as though she had given him something worth far more than food. Sarah smiled, stood up, and walked back toward her scooter without knowing that this single act of kindness would change her life before the sun rose again. If you believe that kindness still matters, that good people deserve second chances, and that one small act can change someone's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. Sarah was a single mother who had learned not to expect life to be fair. 3 years earlier, her husband had died unexpectedly, leaving her with a mountain of bills and a young child who still asked why his father wasn't coming home. Since then, Sarah had worked wherever she could. During the day, she cleaned offices, and in the evenings she delivered meals for a restaurant called Harrison's Kitchen. Her boss, Victor Harrison, was a wealthy businessman who believed every employee was replaceable. To him, Sarah wasn't a struggling mother trying to survive. She was simply another delivery driver who needed to meet impossible targets. That night had been especially terrible. Sarah had been late with 2 deliveries because of flooded streets, and Victor had already warned her that one more complaint would cost her the job. She had earned barely enough to buy one cheap meal. When her shift finally ended, she discovered that the restaurant had accidentally prepared an extra order. Instead of throwing it away, Sarah had bought it for a discounted price, planning to take it home to Caleb. She could already imagine his tired smile when she walked through the apartment door. But then she saw the old man. He was sitting beneath the dim glow of a bookstore sign, his gray hair wet from the rain. His shoes were worn through, and one hand was wrapped around an old umbrella that could no longer protect him. People hurried past without looking at him. Cars splashed water onto the sidewalk. Sarah watched him quietly for several seconds before walking over. She handed him the food. The old man tried to refuse, but Sarah insisted. She told him that someone was waiting for her at home and that she could manage one night without dinner. What she didn't tell him was that her own stomach was aching with hunger. She didn't tell him that Caleb had eaten the last piece of bread that morning. She didn't tell him that she had no idea how she would buy breakfast. The old man looked deeply into her eyes and asked her name. Sarah told him. He gave her his name in return, Jonathan Whitmore. Sarah thought nothing of it. She returned home that night and found Caleb asleep on the couch, still wearing his school clothes because he had been waiting for her. Sarah covered him with a blanket and sat beside him. She whispered that everything would be okay, even though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. The next morning, Sarah received a message from Victor ordering her to come to the restaurant immediately. When she arrived, she found Victor standing in the office with 2 lawyers and several sharply dressed men. Her heart dropped. She assumed she was about to be fired. Instead, Victor looked terrified. One of the lawyers placed a folder on the desk. The restaurant's major investor had suddenly requested an emergency meeting. Harrison's Kitchen was facing serious financial trouble, and the investor had discovered that Victor had been mistreating employees, falsifying delivery records, and withholding wages. Sarah stood silently, confused. Then the office door opened. The elderly homeless man from the bench walked inside. But he no longer looked homeless. He wore a tailored dark suit and carried a leather briefcase. The lawyers immediately stood when they saw him. Victor's face turned pale. Jonathan Whitmore wasn't a homeless stranger. He was the retired founder of Whitmore Hospitality Group, one of the largest restaurant investment companies in the Midwest. Years earlier, he had stepped away from the business and quietly traveled across the country, visiting communities and observing how ordinary people treated those who had nothing to offer them. He had been considering investing millions of dollars into Harrison's kitchen. But after Sarah gave him her last meal, Jonathan had decided to investigate the company himself. What he discovered shocked him. Victor had been exploiting desperate workers, cutting their pay, threatening employees, and firing anyone who complained. Sarah's treatment was only one example. Jonathan looked at Victor and informed him that the investment deal was canceled. Then he announced that the company would be placed under new management while the financial records were investigated. Victor tried to defend himself, but the evidence was already in Jonathan's hands. Then Jonathan turned toward Sarah. He told her that he had spent his entire life building businesses, but somewhere along the way, he had learned that a company's true value wasn't measured by its profits. It was measured by how it treated people when nobody important was watching. Sarah began to cry. Jonathan offered her a management position overseeing employee welfare and delivery operations. He also arranged for her outstanding wages to be paid and created a scholarship fund for workers' children, starting with Caleb. Sarah couldn't believe it. The woman who had gone home hungry because she gave away her last meal was now being offered a chance to build a better future for her son. Weeks later, Sarah returned to the same bench where she had met Jonathan. The rain had stopped, and the city lights reflected beautifully across the pavement. This time, she wasn't carrying a delivery bag. She was carrying 2 warm meals. She sat down and smiled. One was for herself. The other was for anyone who might need it. Sometimes kindness doesn't come back immediately. Sometimes it costs us something. Sometimes we give when we have almost nothing left. But that doesn't make the kindness meaningless. It makes it powerful. And perhaps the greatest lesson Sarah learned was that you never truly know who is sitting beside you, what battle they are fighting, or how one small act of compassion might change 2 lives forever. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach people who may need their own reminder that kindness still exists. Before you go, comment, "Kindness always wins," if you believe that helping someone today can change their tomorrow. Because sometimes the person you think has nothing to give you may be the very person who changes everything.